Well, I think what I'll do is just wanted to say, start off with a couple of things. Over the last 2 years, the global energy scenario has turned upside down. All our old forecasts are no longer valid, and therefore we have to look at this anew. I've done a detailed paper. I hope the IPPAI will circulate it, because this is not global energy scenario is not something you can fit into 5 minutes or 50 minutes for that matter. Basically to say that in India we've started reviewing things of what is national security. I was a member of the Naresh Chandra task force, and rather than concentrate just on defense and internal security, we went into energy, we went into raw materials, we went into technology, because ultimately security is what helps you to move along with economic growth. Otherwise, it's meaningless. Coming to the global energy scenario, the fact is that the dependence on oil has been steadily decreasing. It's gone down from 40% of the world's primary energy needs to about 30% or so, 35%, and it is likely to go down because of the OECD countries shifting to gas. The largest demand growth is going to be in our neighborhood, and right till now the supplies have been largely from the Persian Gulf or the Arab Gulf. When we go to Iraq, we call it the Arab Gulf. When we go to Iran, we call it the Persian Gulf. The disputes here largely in security terms are primarily between the Iranians and the Saudis, and the Iranians and the West, with the Chinese and the Soviets quietly backing the Iranians and also taking oil from the Saudis. The Chinese are very wise in the way they conduct diplomacy, the way they have invested in Saudi Arabia, the way they are investing in Iran is much we can learn about, and they're doing a remarkable job of it. Now, wind and solar, as far as we are concerned, is relatively small, but I'd ask you not to ignore over a longer term, over 30 or 40 years, the importance of nuclear energy. Because when and if we build up a capacity of about 30,000 megawatts, we get into a thorium cycle of fast breeders, and we have virtually unlimited thorium ore in our country. So while one can ignore nuclear energy in the short term, in the longer term it will be dangerous. And more important, I think atomic energy and space are two fields where indigenous research has been as good as research anywhere in the world. So I don't believe in foreign dependence and are depending too much. But what are the global changes? I think the most important change is shale gas. And let's start with the United States. The US now has surplus gas. It is exporting and does not really know what to do with it. The US is going to become the largest producer of oil in the world by 2019. And really the estimated reserves of gases which the US has is larger than the Gulf. So the major change in the world, in world geopolitics, is the revival of the, everybody said the United States is declining. The United States not going anywhere. It's not going to decline. And it's largely going to be because of shale gas and shale oil. And the important point is that it is North America which has the largest untapped resources in the world, if you add Canada to the United States. What is the implications of this? I think as it is the World Bank estimates that oil prices will fall to $102 a barrel by the end of this year. Because the US is no longer importing, Venezuela has got surpluses, and incidentally, the other factor to be borne in mind, if you go into the untapped resources of Venezuela, plus the shale resources of Argentina, North and South America is going to become the center of world energy. The Persian Gulf will no longer be as salient to the world. What are these implications for US policy changes? And I think this is crucial. The US is pulling out of Afghanistan. It's realized to fight wars is a waste of time, waste of lives, and everything. And is striking two major agreements which it has started negotiating. One is the Transatlantic Trade and Economic Partnership with Europe and the European Union. And the Americans are very clever. They say you will get gas from us freely only if you sign a free trade agreement with us on our terms. And the US is the most powerful economy in the world, and it will get its terms. So within a couple of years, you're going to see the Europeans importing a bulk of their gas. It's very easy for the Americans. Thus far, they've had gas pipelines to import gas, especially in the East Coast. They're just going to turn them around and export. So even the infrastructure costs are going to be low, and you're going to see a remarkable return of industry to the United States and oil. And the important question and the geopolitical decision we are going to take, is India going to join this or stay out of it? If we stay out of it, there are problems. But I believe that given our politics, our politicians, their sort of propensity for populism, we will not have the will to make the sort of economic changes to join the rest of Asia. And if we don't, we'll be back in growth rates which were pejoratively called the Hindu growth rate in the 1960s and the 1970s. So we have a major decision because of energy to take in political terms. Do you join the Trans-Pacific Partnership or not? The Americans are calling us an Indo-Pacific power, not an Indo-Atlantic power. So we can't join the Europeans. But certainly, a decision are you going to take, are you going to join this or not? But the Chinese, when they are not really going to be all left out, because they have even larger shale gas resources. They are going to touch the equivalent of 500,000 barrels of oil a day within the next couple of years. But China is going to have a much tougher time, because in areas where the gas resources are located, water is a problem. In other places, population is a problem, and shale is very earthquake prone. You've got all sorts of dangers going into it. Another new area of tension where gas and oil has been found is Israel and the Mediterranean. And in the Mediterranean, everybody is fighting each other. You see it in Syria, you see it in Turkey, you see it between the Greeks and Cyprus. This is going to become a new area of tension as the race for energy resources in the absence of well-demarcated maritime frontiers goes on. So we are, as I said, getting a totally global scenario which is quite different. And as I said, the rivalries in the Persian Gulf, it is best that we stay out of. We need the Iranians because the Iranians constitute our entry to Afghanistan and to Central Asia. That's the only route we have. The Pakistanis will not grant us that route. And if your trade with Central Asia, with Iran, also you can do switch deals in Central Asia on energy if you have your Iranian connections properly laid down, because Central Asia Iranian pipelines are on the offer. So I think what is also going to happen is, and I think it's crucial, for 30 years we've been blackmailed by OPEC and by rising oil prices. I think we can breathe safely that that's not going to happen again because of energy shortages, the way the world energy scenario is playing out. We in the Persian Gulf luckily have maintained good relations with both Iran and Saudi Arabia. But really the fastest, and this is where Indian business opportunities lie, the fastest growing potential for gas and oil today is Iraq. We started late. We were worried because we had too close relations with the Saudis, whether the Iraqis would welcome us. But then the Americans have made such a hash in Iraq that they'll welcome everybody, including us. So I think these are areas we need to explore. And I must tell you, we're lagging far behind the Chinese. I don't think we should try and compete with the Chinese the way they do things, because the whole world regards them as being overly mercantile and out to make money with very little that they give. So I don't think we should be a carbon copy of the Chinese, but we certainly need to see some of their practices. I mean, I'll give you a classical example. When I was ambassador in Myanmar, I'd put forward a proposal for 1,800 megawatts of power from the Salween River, the Damayanti project. We're 19 years later, we haven't prepared a project report. And the National Hydroelectric Commission, the Hydroelectric Power Corporation, says it may not be economical 19 years later. That's why the Myanmar guys once told me that India should be a member of NATO. And I asked him what NATO meant. He said, no action, talk only. Let me tell you, if we don't grab this, the Chinese are going to grab it. It'll be on our border, sitting on the sensitive states of Arunachal Pradesh, Manipur, and Nagaland. So think about it, where they are already playing all sorts of political games. Coming to Central Asia, this is another very interesting part. Here, the Russians had always feared the West will take over once the Soviet Union break up, because the entire pipeline network was Soviet era, built by the Soviets. It's not the West which has taken over. The Chinese have taken over. All the new pipelines coming up to replace the old Soviet pipelines are Chinese, including one of 6,000 kilometers between Turkmenistan, its large gas resources, and coastal China. And the Chinese are so smart that they realize there's going to be surplus gas, so they have also taken feeders into energy deficient South Central Asian countries. So that is the new game being played out. It is not going to please the Russians, because the Russians have been cut out. Their pipelines are of little use. The Chinese really are saying that this pipeline is ultimately meant to extend across the Caspian and into Iran. So that's the extent of forward planning, but you know, the best laid plans of men and mice go wrong in geopolitics. As you know, the Americans found in Iraq. They went in thinking that the Iraqis will be ever so grateful that they'll get all the oil and gas resources of Iraq, and not one American company has got anything worthwhile except in Kurdistan, which is viewed with great suspicion by the Iraqi government. Within South Asia itself, I think we've got a good thing going with Bhutan. With Nepal, they're difficult to deal with. And I think till the Nepalese make up their mind, I don't think they've made up their mind, that they are going to take the Bhutan part to development rather than forever grumbling about life. We're going to move slow. But Bhutan is certainly a success story. We're looking at small amounts of 500 megawatts to Bangladesh, a similar amount to Pakistan. But really the major project is the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline. We've signed an agreement. The Americans are packing up to leave. It's going to take a long time before that pipeline can come into place. I don't think the security situation will permit it. So, I mean, the energy cooperation with Sri Lanka is good, but as the power secretary who's here, former power secretary, was telling me, it's never been easy in dealing with a neighbor because, you know, of different political pressures and pulls. The thing I'd like to point out is that this is a changing global energy scenario we have to learn to live with and learn to exploit to our advantage. We've got some deals going with the Americans, but the Americans are basically holding us at a tight leash. Hey, I'll give you a little here, a little there, but you join the Trans-Pacific Partnership on my terms, then the Canadians and we are open to you. So I think this is something which we have to play out, but what is important is that in this scenario, in dealing with the Gulf, where the producer was king, the consumer is now king. We need to negotiate far more hard-headed, because China and Soviet and Russia, the difference is on pricing. Russia wanted oil-linked prices. The Chinese said no, and the Chinese have held out, though they have signed a deal for purchase of oil which amounts to about $280 billion over a 15-year period, 20-year period. But it is small compared to China's own needs. And how that plays out, one can't see. But as I said, the country which is going to take the maximum hit on its global influence because of these discoveries of oil is Russia. But the Russians are very shrewd in their energy diplomacy, and perhaps that's something we need to bear in mind because of our existing investments, though the Russians are quite unhappy with us the way we keep cancelling contracts because the Supreme Court holds them to be corrupt. The shale revolution, as I said, is going to change things. The Russians now are responding by saying, all right, if you won't buy our oil and gas, our Trans-Siberian pipelines go up to Vladivostok, we'll sell them to Japan and South Korea. So Japan and South Korea are going to sit very interestingly playing the Russians off against the others. On that happy note, since the chairman has asked me to conclude, as I said, you are welcome to read the paper. It is longer than what I had to say, but the sum and substance is the world is changing. Thank you.